The DJ accepts no responsibility for the next record.
Say what? Oh no, he didn't. Where's the money, man? Where's my money?
It's time to man up, America.
Let's do this.
All right. We are here live, Man Up America. I'll tell you this much. I'm glad that we are back in the studio because for the past few episodes we've been off-site, and it's no bueno. So we're back in the studio live. Talk 101.3 The Buzz. You're listening to us there. If you're watching TV, WTNB. Charter Channel Charter Channel 5, digital TV station 27.1. You know what, guys? It's just us today in the studio. I want to thank, this is episode number, not counting the specials we did like last night at the block party. This is episode number 13. Structured episode, hour-long episode. For the first 12 episodes, we wanted to make sure that we had a series of guests and co-hosts in place that kind of set the tone for Man Up America. Special thank you to J-Rob, Brian Graves from the Cleveland Daily Banner, Darren Holmes, bullpen coach of the Colorado Rockies, Bill Carrico, Senator of Virginia, Steve Watson, former host of Monster House and the DIY Network. Who else did we have on? We had a bunch of folks on. Matt Ryerson. We had Matt Ryerson on last Thursday. Of course, we had the shrink Rob Alderman in the studio a number of occasions. We called Coach McCowan over at Cleveland High School. He was so gracious to answer phone calls. Terry Posey Gun Shops was a big part of our gun special. Thank you to Terry Posey for being a part of that show. Additionally, we've had some great feedback on the program. And if I missed anybody, I'm sorry. You guys made the first 12 weeks epic. The month of October was epic. And we've constantly joked about, in the middle of a political season, how we try not to talk about politics. We've got one more week, guys. We're not going to fight it. Too much going on, so we're going to talk a little bit about it. And today is our dirt special. So today's our dirt special. I told you last night, if you actually tuned into WTNB, when we did, I was live at the block party from 9 to 10 o'clock. We interviewed the Republicans who were pushing Trump at the block party. We interviewed the Democrats who were pushing Hillary and Kane at the block party. And we had a chance to talk to State Senator Mike Bell, ask him about what was coming up next session and what he thought the future held for our Governor Bill Haslam. So we were grateful to have those on the program last night. But I told the folks who tuned in last night to the special presentation at the Halloween block party here in Cleveland, Tennessee, I told them today was the dirt special. Well, we were going to talk about the dirt. The dirt. There's just been a lot of dirt in the media. So we're going to man up on the dirt. I'm going to tell you what we're talking about today. Of course, we're going to start off tonight's Game 6 of the World Series, Cubs-Indians. If you have not been watching the World Series this year, you're missing it. I tell you, it's probably one of the most exciting and emotionally engaging World Series of my lifetime. I think back, I haven't felt this, I know there's a lot of Braves fans that listen to this radio program, but what I'll say is I haven't felt overly, involved, emotionally attached to a World Series since Kirby Puckett was in there. I was a big Kirby Puckett fan as a kid. You remember he played for the Minnesota Twins. So we've got the Cubs and the Indians. For those of you who aren't baseball people, just listen to me for one moment. We'll get on to the politics and everything else you tune in for. If you're not a baseball person, obviously the Cubs have the curse of the GOAT. Since the early 1900s, they've just been plagued. Not even been to the World Series, and they're in it this year. So monumental season for the Cubs. It's just been so long, but it's been since 1948 that the Indians have brought home a title. And on the back of it was 50-plus years since Cleveland had seen a title, and the Cavaliers won one in the NBA, the city of Cleveland, Ohio, not Cleveland, Tennessee. The Cavaliers won the NBA title this year, and Cleveland Indians are staring at one too if they can pull it out tonight. This is a historical World Series, and it was just an amazing series to watch. Every game has been intense, even if it was a blowout. Now, I'll tell you, I'm rooting for the Cubbies. You got to root for the Cubbies. Part of that is this summer, I've told you, I was at Wrigley Field. I saw the Cubs play. And Wrigley Field is an amazing place to watch a baseball game. I went to Turner Field. I'm anxious to see what the Braves are going to do down there in North Georgia. I went to Turner Field. I saw games. I saw the Braves play. Nowhere near the ambiance you feel when you're at Wrigley Stadium. Never been to Fenway. I want to go there. I want to check that out. I've heard it's the same way. But Wrigley, man, what an amazing, amazing place. Amazing place. We got our producer, Josh, in the studio. What's up, Josh? Mr. Producer is what I call him. He likes to be referred to in a very serious manner. Mr. Producer. I ask permission for things I say. He says I can't say certain things. I can't dog certain people. Is that right, Mr. Producer? Yeah. Is that right? Okay. Josh, appreciate what you do for the show. Hey. Just want you to say props. In fact, we're going to give you your own screen up here on the Man Up screen. Just say Josh Incorporated or however you want to do that. I think he's making sure that we get the live stream to 101.3 The Buzz continuous. We appreciate you guys tuning in. So, yeah, tonight, Game 6, World Series, Cubbies, Indians. The good doctor will be watching. I'm going to be watching. It's going to be epic. My prediction for tonight, Cubbies hold it off to a Game 7. It just feels that way, doesn't it? It just feels like the Cubs are going to hold it to a Game 7, that we're going to see a Game 7 in this series. We've got to see a Game 7 in this series. You know, heaven's shining above, saying, in the middle of political dirt season, I'm going to give you some good baseball. Thank you, good Lord, for all you do for us little people down here. When we need you, you send us a good series like the Cubs Indians. So tune in tonight, Game 6 of the World Series. I've reached out to a couple of Cubs fans. They're too nervous. They don't want to jinx it. They're not coming on the show. Mark Grissom's not coming on the show. He said, I'll talk to you after the World Series. Doesn't want to jinx it. So I understand. I get it. We'll tune in Game 6 tonight. Hopefully the Cubs will win. We'll see a Game 7. So last night we were at the Halloween block party. For those of you who've never been to the Halloween block party, I used to say that I thought it was the biggest or the largest attended event in Cleveland, Tennessee. I no longer think that. I think that there's some other festivals that have popped up in partnership with Main Street, particularly the Apple Festival, that probably draws more people because it's multiple days. But there was still in it a really big crowd last night. I don't know who the band was. They've announced it over and over. It was like a cover band. They did a really great job. Played mostly pre-1990, circa 1990 kind of stuff. Jesse's Girl, I think, was their finale. That's Rick Springfield. Hey, guess what? I saw Rick Springfield in Cleveland, Ohio this year. That was pretty neat. I went to see Just Jesse's Girl, for those of you who grew up in that era. But we were live from the block party, and we interviewed a few people and talked a little bit about the block party. And what was amazing about that block party was there were 2 booths at work in the block party. Well, there were more booths than that. But the 2 I'm talking about, one was the GOP booth, and they had this huge sign that said, Make America Great Again. They were giving out Trump signs, and they swear they gave away thousands of Trump signs. Thousands. They may have, because they were out by the time I got there. Democrats around the block, they were down there. They were giving out Hillary and McCain or Tim Kaine signs. They had a lot left at the end of the night. But what was amazing to me as I walked around and I spoke to people, everyone's committed. Everyone's made up their mind in this election that I talked to last night. Not one individual last night said, I really don't know. I did have one person tell me they never vote because all it is a reason that they'll get sent to war. And I think what they're referring to is registering for selective services. You have to do that in order to vote. But they kind of had it backwards. But everybody else had already made up their mind. Most of them had already voted, early voted. And we've been watching these early voting totals come in, and they're coming in pretty hefty. But If history's any indicator, which in this election, history's been very little of an indicator, if history's any indicator, early voting totals really just show you the base of support that your base is getting out early. So most of the undecideds probably roll in closer to Election Day. But early voting numbers are really, really high. It seems like in Cleveland, Tennessee, most people have made up their mind, which brings me to the big revelation over the weekend was the FBI reopening the case against Hillary Clinton. Well, they reopened the case based on some more evidence concerning Hillary Clinton's email server scandal. Which brings us to dirt number 1. We're going to talk about the dirt. So you've been saturated since March of this past year with constant dialogue over Hillary Clinton and her email server. And I venture to say that most of you are entirely unaware of what's really happening with that. So here on Man Up America, we man up all the time, right? We try to apply the empirical model to things. We have the way we feel about stuff, but we always consider we might be wrong. But at the heart of what we do is we try to be factual. So I've got some notes. I'm going to try to break it down for the average man what this controversy is about. Now, to all the liberals listening, before you get your panties in a wad, we're going to talk about Trump's dirt too. We're going to hit Trump. But right now, let's talk about Hillary Clinton and the email controversy. So what happened this past weekend was Anthony Weiner, a disgraced Politico, his ex-wife, estranged ex-wife, works with Hillary Clinton's campaign. And evidently, when she hooked up her phone to a computer that was joint shared with her ex-husband to download her personal emails, it moved onto that computer a volume of emails related to the private use of Hillary Clinton's server. Now, why does this matter? Evidently, there's something different in these emails than what the Clinton campaign, or Hillary Clinton, turned over to the FBI for investigation. Which means there was something in these emails that they feel they need to look at further that they weren't able to look at in the first batch of emails. So, number 1, regardless of how you feel about the email controversy, the fact that they've reopened this is because something exists that they didn't have before, or they suspect they didn't have before. Which brings us back to, why is this email situation a controversy to begin with? Let's dig into the dirt here, okay? News broke in March, and I'm actually reading from a CNN breakdown of the events of this. So we're going to make sense of this. So let's go through the timeline. News broke in March that Hillary Clinton, used a personal email address connected to a privately owned server. Some of you don't even know what a server is. This is what I'll tell you about a server. It is essentially a piece of equipment that sits in a room that makes a lot of noise, like a fan blowing, like your regular computer. It is just a bin that catches and holds all of that information. That's what a server is. A server is a hard drive somewhere that holds all the data. So Hillary Clinton got her own private server, okay, rather than a government server, and she used it while she was Secretary of State. And she says that she used it because she wanted the convenience of using one mobile device. You know, most of us nowadays, we use our phones to send email. She didn't want to have a government-issued BlackBerry and a privately issued BlackBerry. And according to CNN, most of the communication on the private server was pretty mundane. They said it was innocuous. It was Clinton asking for scheduling updates, fitting in trips to her hairstylist. So, all right, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt, Secretary. You really didn't want to use your government email to set your pedicures. We understand. So you set up a private server, but it's not about the fact that she didn't want personal communication on her government server. It's whether or not official government communication was passed through her private server, which was hackable and unsecure. It's not going through the government protocols. So you say, well, the risk of hack and of being unsecured It doesn't matter to me. You may say that. You may say it doesn't matter to me. Nothing was hacked. No information got out. No harm, no foul. You may say that. But to further the controversy was what was her intent. Once again, she said it was so she only had to carry one mobile device. However, when they asked for her server, when the FBI asked, hey, hand this stuff over, they pled the fifth in the interrogations from Congress, members of her State Department and campaign related to her tech team. Many of those emails were redacted, which meant that they had classified information on them. Now, Clinton has said that no classified information was on her email servers. But, what it said, we had a number here. At least, okay, we're going to talk about this. She released 55,000 pages of email. Many of the emails are, or in part, or in full, redacted, which means that they were considered classified, privileged information. So for her to say that there was no privileged information on her server, but then to hand over emails that were redacted, the average Joe looks and says, Miss Secretary, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, not only that, but when an independent panel of intergovernmental agents who were reviewing these emails for classified information, when they reviewed them, they started to retroactively classify things that should have been classified to begin with. So this is where Hillary Clinton apologizes and says it was not wise for her to use a personal server, that she did not feel information was classified at the time it was rendered. In fact, according to the CNN article, all government agencies are responsible for determining which of their materials are to be classified. So Clinton says, I didn't feel any of this information needed to be classified until it came time to hand it over to the FBI, and then she felt it should be classified. And a panel of 12 intergovernmental agency officials, post haste, has decided that at least 125 of those should have been classified. So here's what the average Joe, to all you liberals out there, let me show you what the average man says when they look and they talk about the Hillary Clinton email controversy. Let's get into the dirt. They say, we understand that Hillary said, well, the reason I did it was I only wanted to carry one mobile device, and I felt in my judgment that none of the communications on there were classified. But the average Joe says, A, just because you wanted the convenience of a mobile device to run the potential risk of hack of national security, not a good enough reason. 2, if you said that you didn't feel anything needed to be classified, why redact so much information going to the FBI? 3, evidently you were wrong because an independent panel of 12 other officials said you made a bad judgment in determining what should have been classified. Now you say, well, the law changed around about 2014 and things that weren't classified before are classified now. Okay, listen, I get it that the law changed. Somewhere, whether it was a legal opinion in 2014 or the opinion of this intergovernmental panel, somebody in their wisdom said certain information should be classified, and our Secretary of State did not feel that that information was classifiable. So there's the dirt to the average Joe out there. To the average Joe. The average Joe says, wanting your own mobile device, not a good enough reason to run the risk. 2, why did you redact so much information? 3, the independent panel has disagreed with you. It should have been classified. And then I'm going to add a 4th one. The average Joe looks and says, if there's nothing to hide, why plead the 5th before Congress? And why bleach, which is a process of deleting emails and cleaning them, why bleach your emails and smash iPods and iPhones with hammers? To quote Charles Krauthammer, the only people that do that, or excuse me, to quote Rudy Giuliani, a former prosecutor, obviously a Trump supporter, the only people who smash iPhones with hammers and bleach emails are criminals. Why, Miss Secretary, would you do those things? So what we have now is we have the FBI reopening the investigation. They said pretty much based on the evidence, Comey came out. Y'all remember the announcement, the FBI director, and said, based on the information we have now, we do not see that Hillary Clinton needs to be prosecuted for any cause, for negligence or anything like that. We believe she was unwise, believe she had poor judgment, but she didn't do anything criminal. Now they have this new batch of emails, which they received a warrant to go through all of this on Uma, the campaign director's computer. They have this new batch, which they feel has something they didn't have before. They reopened the case. They've already determined she had bad judgment. They have already determined that she was unwise. So why reopen the case? Just to verify that she had bad judgment and unwise? No, here's the dirt. They think something's in these emails that was bleached, and they're trying to find out what's in there. We don't know. We speculate, right? Here on Men Up America, not enough information to make a judgment call, but many of you have said that you did not understand the email controversy, and there it is. Email addresses are forms of communication. They're little digital letters back and forth. And if they were classified and had privileged information on them, they probably should have been kept on something more secure, but at best, back to intent, according to the CNN article, there's a lot of evidence to suggest the big reason she opened a private server wasn't for the convenience of a mobile device. It was for the convenience of not having to be held to the freedom of information requests that the government server are subject to. So we create this other account, and I'm going to spit it like this. For all of you who are into the socials out there, the social medias, you're on Facebook, right? What do you think when you see somebody who has a joint Facebook account? You know, the husband and wife team, they have this one Facebook account. Sure, some of them do them for convenience, but most of you think, all right, which one of you was unfaithful, right? Because what happens, you open up a secret Facebook account, a secret email account, because you're hiding something. That's exactly what's happened here with the server, and that's what they suspect. And they suspect that Clinton was trying to hide something that wouldn't be subject to a Freedom of Information request. So there's the dirt on the Hillary Clinton email scandal. Some of you may say, well, that was a really biased presentation. It's the dirt. We're digging into the dirt. What's wrong? Why it's a controversy. That is why the Clinton email is a controversy. So, continuing on, before we move any further, on this program, Man Up America, we always talk about being prepared, and we want to thank our sponsors at all times. But did you know that FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, recommends that each family have provisions to last 72 hours to a week to be self-sustainable? That means you should have a gallon of water per person for hygiene and hydration, and you should also have food on deck in case of a natural disaster or in case of any other disaster. So, are you prepared? Are you self-reliant? For those of you who saw the tornadoes in 2011, how many of us had to take food and water to our neighbors? How many people didn't have food and water in store? Had that been a bigger disaster, where would we have been? I have friends who were in Hurricane Katrina that saw the damage of a natural disaster like that and wish they'd had more provisions on deck. So whether it's a natural disaster like we saw in 2011 or even civil unrest like we've seen in our larger cities, it's a volatile time. Rocky Top Survival Supply recommends that you be prepared for your family. Now, what is Rocky Top Survival Supply? It is not an online store, and there's not a brick-and-mortar store where you can walk in and just buy long-term food storage, water filtration, and other things you may need to be self-reliant. It's not an online store. You have to send us commentsmanuptalk@gmail.com. Commentsmanuptalk@gmail.com if you're ready to start protecting your family and be self-reliant. We're going to put you in touch with a Rocky Top distributor, and they're going to work with your family to meet the needs you have to be self-reliant. It's an entirely private process. It's an entirely personal process. That being said, if you're interested in actually becoming a distributor for Rocky Top Survival Supply, send us that email. Comments, manuptalk@gmail.com. That's Rocky Top Survival Supply. Don't be caught unprepared. Rocky Top Survival Supply. You can see their webpage and get more information at www.rockytopsurvival.com. Let's keep digging into the dirt. It's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. Mr. Trump! Now, some of you want me to dig into his sexual exploits of the past and his statements. I'm not a gonna, and I'll tell you why. Most people understand that dirt. Most of you understand what it's like to say something inappropriate or to behave inappropriately with a person of the opposite sex. You get it, all right? You don't excuse locker room talk. But more of you are confused about where the Hillary camp has been hitting Trump over the past weekend. So Hillary's response to her email controversy has been, Mr. Donald, what about your taxes? What about those taxes? You know, you say you're such a good person, you want to make America great, but are you giving your fair share? How many times have you heard that phrase, the fair share? So let's look at a little article here. For 4 decades, every major presidential candidate, and this article was New York Post, I think, has disclosed his or her tax returns, or at least a summary for the general election. If Donald Trump fails to do so, he will become the first Democratic or Republican nominee to refuse to make a tax disclosure since Richard Nixon did in 1968 and 72. So this is the New York Times, not the Post. New York Times. So the New York Times kind of states, all right, here's what's happened. They obtained 3 pages of Mr. Trump's 1995 tax returns. So this is 1995, 21 years ago. And making first known, it says this is the first time they've seen anything. In that year alone, he showed a $900 million loss, which allowed him to avoid paying any federal income taxes for 18 years. Now, I'm a business owner. I own a small business. I own an LLC. That's called a limited liability corporation. What that means is, under the tax code, my business doesn't pay taxes. That the business passes my portion of ownership onto me, and I pay it on my personal income taxes. So if I made $50,000 last year and my business made $50,000, I personally, as an owner, would report $100,000 in income and pay taxes. But every year before that gets passed to me, we look at our profits and losses. And our current tax code says, Adam, if your personal business didn't do so well this year, you can deduct that loss from your taxation. Because ultimately, this is what the government looks for taxes on. And all of you understand sales tax, right? You don't pay sales tax until you buy something, till you get something, correct? Have you ever walked in a store and they said, give me your sales tax for coming in the store? Has that ever happened? No, it doesn't happen. Have any of you been charged income tax when you didn't make any income? That the government said, give us your fair share whether you make income or not this year? No. So we all understand that. We all understand that in order for us to pay taxes, we have to bring something home. This is essentially what the government says for businesses. Unless you're going to pay taxes on what you bring home, on your profits, what you make, you're not going to pay taxes again on your net worth. You know, if I go out this year and I make $50,000 and I pay taxes on that $50,000 in my business, and I choose to take what's left over, which is usually about $30,000, and buy a piece of equipment that becomes of value in the business, they don't charge me taxes for that piece of equipment again. I've already paid taxes. Not only did I pay taxes on making the $50,000 that bought the equipment, I probably paid sales tax on the equipment too. So I've already paid taxes. They don't tax me on my net worth again. They tax me on whether or not I made money. So if this year my profits show $100,000, the government's going to say, give us the taxes on that $100,000. So what's happened with Donald Trump here has happened with any of us on a business owner level, is he didn't make money. He actually lost money. So some of you say, well, if you lose money, it needs to be on you, but if you make money, you need to pay some. What the government says is, no, what's fair is fair. So if you lose money, you can actually deduct the loss from other forms of income, including future profits. So what the government says for a business is, it's not just what happens in 1 year, but what happens over time with you as a business. Now, why would they do this? If I lost a bunch of money this year, it was just a bad year. And I go back to all of my friends in Polk County, Tennessee. You knew what it was like when the rock slide cut your county completely in half. Businesses on the north side of the mountain in Copper Basin suffered. They suffered. They suffered because people could not get up there from this area of the state to spend money. And so they had a really hard time that year, a very hard time that year. And so that many of them filed losses. So rather than taking a big punch in the face next year, the government gives you future years to heal. So what the New York Times found was in 1995 alone, Trump lost $900 million, and that would have allowed him to possibly avoid income taxes for up to 18 years because he could take those losses in chunks over time. He could take it over time. Now, you can say that showing a $900 million loss might be evidence that Trump's not as good a businessman as he said he is. I mean, Mitt Romney came out and said that in the presidential primary, didn't he? He came out and said, you think he's this great business mogul. He really isn't. You can say that this is evidence of that, but you can't say this is evidence of him doing anything wrong, because I'm telling you, as a small business owner, we do the same thing. We have to, or we don't survive. If I had to just eat every loss but share every gain, all of us would go belly up. If we gave when we had, but we didn't get it when we lost, we would go belly up. So it goes further. So the question is, because he hasn't released anything, is 1995 an outlier, or is this pretty customary for Donald Trump? So here's what we know. In the absence of any disclosures, we have to look to other things on Trump's taxation. So here's the dirt, manning up on the dirt. 1995, we saw that over $900 million in losses from Mr. Trump. In 91 and 93, going back further, the New Jersey Casino Control Commission reported for those 3 years that Mr. Trump claimed losses that would have allowed him to avoid paying income taxes. We don't have any specific numbers. This was a time when the Atlantic City casinos faced significant financial trouble, and losses would have helped Trump eliminate his tax bill. So once again, like Copper Basin suffering because of the rock slide that cuts off that corridor, Atlantic City had a bad economic time in that year, and I think Mr. Trump's talked about that, and therefore he probably filed a loss. 1984, even further back, tax court records, this is court, state Mr. Trump paid no federal income taxes. In 1978 and 79, even further back, although he claimed to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars at the time, Mr. Trump paid no federal... Now, this is what I don't like about the Times here. Even though he claimed to be worth, your net worth and your profit and loss are two different things. For those of us who run a business, we have a thing called a balance sheet. That's how much we're worth. Remember how I just told you about buying a piece of equipment? That's part of my worth. Once I own that equipment, it's worth something. A lot of you may buy your house, okay? When you buy your house, you pay taxes on that purchase, right? And then you pay property taxes to local government and state every year. But what if every year you had to pay a sales tax again on the purchase of your house just because you maintained it in your worth, because it was part of your balance sheet? I'm asking you to look at yourself, guys. What if you had to pay sales taxes every year? This is what's ridiculous about this statement with Trump. He claimed to be worth a lot, but he paid no federal income taxes that year. Two different things. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. All right. He took advantage of deductions available to real estate developers in claiming losses from partnerships. He reported a negative income of $406,000 in 78 and another loss in 79 of $3.4 million. All right, in 75 through 77, he paid more than $71,000 in income taxes and about $218,000 of taxable income earned in those years, according to 1981. So he paid from 75 to 77. Not a lot, but he paid. All right, so here's the big question related to the dirt on Trump's tax. I'm not going to read the rest of these. There's a bunch here. But, you know, why would he not release? Kind of the same thing to the Hillary thing. There's something he doesn't want you to know. Now, he cites an IRS audit. So here's your choices for president, guys. You have someone being investigated by the FBI, and you have someone being audited by the IRS. Congratulations. What a season. But here's what we don't know. Without the ability to look at Trump's taxes, we don't know. We do know that real estate developers get a pretty sweet deal under the current tax code and how they develop land. But we don't know how much money he made in those years, and we don't know how he wrote off a lot of that debt. You know, we talk about charitable donations. Those of you who have made charitable donations, whether it's to your church or to a charity, when you make charitable donations, the government says, because you gave directly to community, we're going to allow you to deduct that off your taxes, so you don't necessarily have to pay taxes because you chose to give to community. It's to make, to encourage us to give to our community directly. We don't know if he's avoided paying income tax because he made large charitable donations. We don't know. So we know in these years that we do have information, he filed business losses. But you can also avoid paying income taxes by giving away a lot of money to charity. So we don't know those things. We don't know if he had any charitable contributions. So there's the dirt on Donald Trump. We don't know what he's hiding on the other side. We suspect maybe he's not as charitable. We suspect maybe his business losses show that he's lost a lot of money over his lifetime, and that's a big blow. I kind of think that's maybe it. It's complete speculation. I speculated on Clinton. I'm going to speculate on Trump. I think it's an ego thing for him. I think he's not nearly as successful a businessman as everybody wants to give him credit for, and it's an ego thing for him to find out that in many years he just lost a bunch of money. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, I've got more dirt. We're going to get the dirt on Butch Jones. That's right, University of Tennessee coach Butch Jones. We're going to get some dirt on him. And also when we come back, while you were sleeping, some dirt that maybe you haven't even thought about or paid attention to. In fact, I know you haven't. Unless you're an employer, you've been paying really close attention to it. We're here on Talk 101.3 The Buzz, WTNB Television 27.1, Charter Channel 5, Comcast 210. We'll be back in a moment. The good Dr. J. Adam here, talking to all the gentlemen out there. For those of you with wives, girlfriends, even mothers, which would make all of you, you need to call 423-472-8887 and talk to the good folks at Bliss Day Spa. Nothing says I love you like the special treatment, the VIP treatment of the services of Bliss Day Spa. Call them today, 423-472-8887. Tell them the good doctor sent you from Men Up America. Are you looking to refinance your home, or perhaps you're in the market to actually purchase? Take it from the good Dr. J. Adam. There's no need to go far and wide to look for mortgage help. Call 339-8086, Home Mortgage Solutions, LLC, right here in Cleveland. Their team's prepared to help you with lending, with refi options. Just give them a call, 339-8086, and tell them the good Dr. J. Adam sent you.
Woodman Life has been keeping its promises to members for more than 100 years. That means we've survived the Great Depression, Black Friday, and all the other ups and downs our economy has faced. In good times and bad, we're strong and stable. We're an organization your family can count on. At Woodman Life, we've always believed that slow and steady really does win the race. Our conservative investment philosophies are just one part of the strength of our organization. What really makes Woodman Life strong is the trust and loyalty of our members.
Contact your local Woodman representative today by calling 423-790-2847. With 3 offices serving Southeast Tennessee, your Woodman representative is standing by to help you.
Woodman of the World Life Insurance Society of Omaha, Nebraska. Woodman Life, standing strong for generations.
So, how's the new job?
Love it. But it's not just a job, it's a career.
Life insurance? Love?
I told you Woodman Life is really active in the community, right? They support all kinds of community improvement projects. How's your job, by the way?
Don't ask.
Begin your financial career today with Woodman Life by calling 423-790-2847.
Woodman of the World Life Insurance Society of Omaha, Nebraska. Woodman Life, standing strong for generations.
The good. All right, and we're back. Man Up America, Talk 101.3 The Buzz, WTNB Television. Oh, today's show's about dirt. We've got dirt. So let's move right on. We're running out of time. We're down to like 15 minutes. We got to scoot. Let's get this. I got two things I want to cover here. Spent too much time on Donald and Hillary again. Dang it, Donald. Dang it, Hillary. Let's move on. What you guys really want to talk about, big news over the weekend, Tennessee loses again. So let's talk about the dirt. Is Butch Jones as good a coach as a lot of you guys want to give him credit for? Hey, now listen, all you politicos out there, I know we're back to sports. Bear with me. I'm going to do a couple of minutes on this, and then I'm going to While You Were Sleeping, which is a really important thing I want you guys to get to, and we've got a guest caller on that too. So, here's the thing. Oh, my goodness. We got noise coming from everywhere. 5 games into the football season, Tennessee Butch Jones looked like a leading candidate for SEC Coach of the Year. 3 games later, he looks like a candidate for SEC's coaching hot seat. That's how quickly and drastically things can change in a conference as competitive as this one. This is from the Knoxville News-Sentinel. You don't have to look any further than last Saturday of September for an example. The day after Auburn won a last-second game against LSU, the Tigers fired Coach Les Miles. If LSU had won, Auburn coach Gus, I never could get his name right, would have been the one on the hot seat. Both of them began the season on a shaky turf. So, of these coaches, let's move on here. Jones was nowhere near the hot seat. In his first 3 seasons, he had stabilized an unstable program, recruited effectively, and won more games each season, including the last 9 seasons. And this season looked like even more promising. They are no longer in control. Instead, they are reeling after an inordinate number of injuries and 3 consecutive losses. Tennessee fans are distraught. The 5-0 start raised their expectations and hopes, but they have since been jolted by the last 3 seasons, which has led to a lot of criticism, including the big news over the weekend. You guys with me? You know what I'm fixing to talk about, don't you? Jalen Hurd, at the cusp of being one of the all-time running backs at the University of Tennessee, says, I'm done with this program. I'm done with Butch Jones. I'm leaving next year. An excellent running back leaving next year. We don't know, allegedly, it's because Butch Jones didn't comment. He didn't comment on the matter. And I'm going to get our phone ready for our next call. He didn't comment. But according to Jalen Hurd's family, Jalen Hurd was promised that Butch would be running certain formations that fit his running style and has not. He's been running a read option. Jalen Hurd was looking for more of an I formation offense. That's a bunch of sport wonk talk, to say that he's just not getting the kind of carries he wants, and the carries he is getting that he's having to really work for, and maybe he's scared of injury. But what this likely means for Jalen Hurd, I read an article that said where's some places he could wind up. He could wind up in Michigan. He could wind up at Southern California. More than likely, he winds up in junior college so he can play next year. But he's leaving. One of your leading offensive performers is leaving the team because he and Butch Jones aren't on the same page. Now, I've said, anybody that knows me, I've said that I personally do not believe Butch Jones is as good a coach as everyone wants to give him credit for. But there's the dirt on Butch, and I'll tell you I'll give you my criticism of Butch. I'm going to man up on why I say that. Over the past few years, when there were I was at the Tennessee-Oklahoma game where Tennessee blew a 14-point lead to start off last season. I sat at that game and watched horrible coaching decisions lead to the demise to take that game into overtime in which the Sooners obviously had the momentum. We saw that in the Florida game last season. Yet every time it was obviously every time coaching has been part of the problem, Butch has blamed it on young players and an inexperienced team and rebuilding brick by brick, yada, 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 yada. Now, before y'all start hating too much, I'm a Tennessee alum, okay? The good doctor got his doctor from Tennessee, all right? The Big Orange. Right across, I went to class 3 days, if not 4 days a week, at the building right across from Neyland Stadium. Looked at it out the window every day. I've been there. I know the campus. I'm attached to the college. I'm telling you, Butch passes the buck, brick by brick, and Jalen Hurd no longer wants to be a brick. No longer wants to be a brick in the wall that is I give my all for Tennessee today. So there's the dirt on Butch Jones. Is he on the hot seat? Contracts speak volumes, okay? I think for the most part, a lot of you still have a lot of faith in Butch Jones. You have a lot of faith in Butch Jones. But here's what we know. He's not fulfilling the promises to his players that he made with what he was going to run on the offense, what he was going to do. He hasn't been doing that. We know that he's suffering at the hands of arguably the same criticism Mark Richt lost his job for last year. What do I mean? Well, let me tell you. You know, y'all are still happy over that big miracle catch against the University of Georgia this year. Look how bad Georgia is this year. Should have never been that close of a game. You guys know that. Hey, sure, you beat Florida. You beat Florida. Probably one of the worst Florida teams I've seen in a long time. You're not winning the games by the spreads you should, in the games you should be winning, and you're not winning the big games. That's the dirt on Butch Jones. Let the hate mail commence. Find us at facebook.com/manuptalk. Send us a message. Comments, manuptalk@gmail.com. Let the hate come forth. Butch Jones, there's your dirt. All right, we're going to call somebody for this. We got about 8 minutes left, and I'm going to get him on the phone. And I'm actually calling Derek Kinsey from the Boys and Girls Clubs. He directs the Boys and Girls Clubs here in Cleveland, Tennessee. And let's call Derek Kinsey here.
Hello, this is Derek.
Hi, Derek Kinsey. This is Adam, Man Up America. How are you, sir?
Hey, Mr. Adam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. All right, I'm going to read from an article, and I know this is something that you're dealing with at the Boys and Girls Club.
Okay.
And then I'm going to ask your 2 cents on it. So just bear with me as I read this article to our listeners and our viewers here, okay?
All right.
While you were sleeping, we're going to call this the While You Were Sleeping segment. While you were sleeping or distracted by the presidential campaign or by the failure of Tennessee to win football games recently, while all this was going on, this happened, all right? This happened. It's been several months running, okay?
What happened? All
And
right.
we're going to tell you what happened.
Good, I want to know.
On July 6th, the Department of Labor issued a notice of proposed rulemaking, okay? I'm going to skip through some of this. I'm going to read the code, but it's called the Fair Labor Standards Act. Now, we hear a lot in the talk and media about moving to $15 an hour minimum wage. I've got news for you guys. With the stroke of a pen, President Obama and the Department of Labor has already started hiking wages. While you were sleeping, they were hiking wages. And for some of you out there go, well, that's a good thing. Well, let's break down into this. The current rule, put in place in 2004, exempts employees with salaries of at least $455 a week or $23,600 a year who perform executive, administrative, or professional sales or computer duties from overtime regulations. So essentially, any of us who've ever worked full-time, or those of you who are familiar with full-time employment, you can pay it, as long as you're paying someone a salary of $23,600 a year, they can be considered what's called full-time exempt, which means they may have to work 50 hours this week, they may have to work 38 the next week, but for the most part, you're paid to do a job. Derek, at the Boys and Girls Club, is that kind of how it's been for you?
Yes, it is. And this is one of those things that would concern any nonprofit. And you left out a couple of professions there in that article. IT specialists and research biologists. Yeah, they're affected by it as well.
Well, there's a lot more. I'm going to get into this. This article keeps going. So in 2014, in March of 2014, a presidential memorandum by Barack Obama, stroke of a pen, guys, letterhead from the desk with his signature, sent to the DOL, demanded overtime exemption regulations be reviewed. This is what has now happened, okay? That cap for overtime exempt has been raised from $23,600 to $47,892, or $921 a week. Now, what does that mean? That means if you're not paid at least $47,892 a year, that means that you have to be paid overtime if you work 40 hours a week. You may say, well, that sounds good. You should make a good wage before you can be exempt. Let's continue. In addition, highly compensated employees, those who make over $100,000 a year, but less than 122, because you're 100 to 122, that's a really hard spot in the economy right there, may be eligible for overtime as well. So all of this has to be in place by December. So to all the listeners out there who say, well, they haven't raised the minimum wage yet, they have raised the professional wage now by saying unless you're paid a certain amount, you must be paid overtime if you work over 40 hours a week. So the reason I have Derek Kinsey on the phone in our last 4 minutes here, Derek Kinsey, give us the 2-minute breakdown of how, as a nonprofit, this is going to affect what you try to do in community with your staff.
Well, something else to note, too, that someone else that is affected greatly by this is our school systems, because they're actually put in the same categories as CEOs. So it does not apply to them to work that overtime. They can actually work that overtime, which is kind of bad for our teachers who are already given a lot of time. So they will actually continue on with their salary. For people like Boys and Girls Clubs and YMCAs and a lot of the other nonprofits, we have to be very cautious of this because it could affect us into rolling into our budgets for the new year. A lot of people in the nonprofit are mission-minded folks anyway, so they want to give a lot of their time and extra energy to their cause because they got into it because of what they wanted to do for their community and how they wanted to give back.
But they really can't anymore.
That's right. It's gonna move into time and a half if things aren't managed properly. So it's causing administration and stuff to have a bird's eye view or a hawk-like view of what's going on when it pertains to hours and nearly going beyond. So we're nearly punished for someone wanting to give extra effort to the cause. And they have to watch that, in timesheet status to make sure that everybody's abiding by that. And though sometimes it's not a problem until it's a problem, we want to be ethical in how we manage that. We want to be fair to our staff. We never wanted to abuse anybody in the first place. We just want everybody to recognize that nonprofits are affected in a way that could actually hurt. I went to a seminar recently where I was talking about some of the smaller nonprofits could actually die because of this, because so many people are giving so much time to make that thing survive, and they can't hold that baby but 40 hours.
Derek Kinsey, thank you for your insight on nonprofits. We're short on time, but we're going to follow up on this at a later date.
Sure.
Thank you. So you've heard it, guys, right there. This ruling will kill smaller nonprofits. I agree. So while you were sleeping, while you were worried about the economy, while you were distracted at $15 an hour in minimum wage, this happened. And I'm going to tell you, as somebody who pays my people per the hour down there, I've got them regulating their time. You know what's going to happen? Listen, the budget is what the budget is. I can't give them more money than we can afford in the budget. We're going to lose money, and then I'm going to wind up in this Donald Trump writing it off my taxes thing again. But you know what's going to happen? I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. We're going to wind up managing
We're
hours,
an organization your
and it
family
is
can
not,
count on.
wow, what happened there? And it is not going to create more money in their pocket. Not going to create more money in their pocket. It's just going to pinch off what we can do. All right? We're going to have to manage things. Ultimately, this is going to wind up, the cost of your goods is going to increase. We already know right now that the nonprofits are going to hurt. All right? If this affects our school system like we know it's going to, you know what's going to happen next? Your taxes, people. Taxes are going to go up all while you were sleeping. Thank you, President Obama and the Department of Labor. We're done. We're Man Up America, and we're out.